Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the first meeting of 2016 to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to move to item 2 on the agenda, which is election of chairman and vice chair. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. DeBrawl. I will say, as I said at the last meeting, if anyone would like to be chair, I'm happy to step aside. So.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Plunkett, Chairman. Pursuant to code, every year at a committee's first meeting, we must elect a new chair, or we must elect a chair and vice chair. I would now open the floor for nominations for chairman.
I nominate Alan Polakowicz.
Second.
Nomination by, and a second, a speedy second. Are there any other nominations for chair? I close the floor to nominations. All those in favor of Mr. Polakowicz as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Carries unanimously without much of a surprise. I open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Todd.
And Mr. Brignano has been nominated. Is there a second to that? And a second has been secured as well. Any other nominations? Close the floor to nominations. All in favor of Mr. Brignano as vice president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Again, carries unanimously. Mr. Chairman, I turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeBrawl. Okay, let us move forward into 2016. First item on the agenda, item 3, is any additions or deletions to the agenda. Do we have any? Mr. Bowley? Members of the commission? If not, we'll move forward with the agenda as written. Next item, number 4A, is approval of the minutes of December 10, 2015. Do we have any motion concerning those minutes?
Move to approve.
We have a second. That was Dr. Day. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Stewart, second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Hearing none, that motion carries. Next item on the agenda, which is not on consent, is item 5A. This is the Willows request for major site plan and preliminary plat approval for a 92-unit single-family residential development to be known as the Willows. Willows Development, LLC is the owner. Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard, LLC is the agent. It's located at the northeast corner of 74th Avenue and 16th Street. The zoning is RM8, which is residential multifamily up to 8 units per acre. The land use designation is M1, which is medium density 1, which is residential up to 8 units per acre. The density of the proposed project is 4.76 units per acre. It is quasi-judicial. So I'll start by asking any commissioner to disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, investigations, anything else that might exist which would prevent them from considering this matter fairly and based upon the evidence and upon the law. Anybody have anything to disclose? If not, we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and open the quasi-judicial hearing and ask that anybody who plans to speak on this issue please stand and be sworn in by the clerk.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it over to Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight we have an application for major site plan and preliminary plat approval for a 92-unit single-family plat over site plan project. The project is located at the northeast corner of 74th Avenue and 16th Street and is zoned RM8. From this point on, north will be to the right, just as a note. So 74th is to the west, 16th is to the south. This is an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site. There was a single-family home that has since been removed in anticipation of this project. Here is the site plan depicting the project layout for the 92 single-family units, as well as the project is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases Phase 1 being mostly the eastern half of the project, and Phase 2 the western half. A majority of the required infrastructure improvements are to be constructed in Phase 1. Here's a preliminary plat graphic depicting the lot layout of the 92 lots, as well as the stormwater tract, other common area tracts, and the subdivision road tract. The project's traffic circulation plan features a full movement driveway connection to 16th Street, a loop road, which is Willow Square, as well as two stubbed out driveway connections to the northern property, which is the adjacent northern property, which is vacant. Because this is technically at the intersection of 74th Ave and 16th Street, Public Works, specifically traffic engineering, does require a 50-foot corner clip for the intersection. The stormwater plan for the project features one centralized stormwater pond here in the middle of the site. The landscape plan features the required 25-foot Type B buffers with 6-foot opaque features along both 16th Street and 74th Avenue. There's also a number of other landscape requirements that are required for site plan projects, including non-vehicular open space trees, lake shoreline trees, road canopy street trees, and littoral zone plantings. Specific to this project, the applicant has proposed to utilize, there are a number of existing canopy trees, specifically sable palm trees, as well as some other canopy tree species within the Indian River Farms Water Control District canal right-of-way. They are proposing to utilize those trees and to obtain an agreement or a legal document from the farms that those trees will be preserved in place, essentially in perpetuity. If they're not able to obtain that document, then they will just plant the required canopy trees within the 25-foot buffer tract, which they are providing via the site plan and plat. The dedications, improvements, and other conditions for this particular project include, again, the 50-foot right-of-way corner clip. Internal sidewalks are to be constructed in accordance with our code, which essentially allows for sidewalk segments to be built in front of each unit as it's constructed, as opposed to in advance of the unit. 16th Street and 74th Avenue buffer requirements, street lighting, and the green space recreation area tracts that are required by the code. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant major site plan and preliminary plat approval for the Willows with conditions listed in the staff report, including the legal document from the farms for permanent preservation of the existing canopy trees within the canal right-of-way, or planting those trees within the 25-foot buffer tract, the 50-foot right-of-way corner clip, and landscaping, street lighting, and sidewalk improvements based on code requirements. Thank you.
Do any members of the commission have questions of the county staff? The applicant is present, I assume? Does the applicant have any questions of county staff?
Yes, sir.
Would the applicant like to make any presentation?
Chuck McLean, and I represent the ownership group, and just want to say that we've been able to work within a farms district in regards to saving the canopy trees, and we met with them a couple of times, and that the document to be taken care of with the staff is being drawn up by their attorney. And the grateful part is it's got some beautiful, beautiful oaks and palms that will all be preserved along that line, with the community taking care of the maintenance side of that for the district. So we're grateful for that. And you know, we wanted to come in with a single family product in here. As some of you may recall, the last time this was in front of the county, it was a townhome type project, and it didn't fare well with the neighbors in the area. I think Mr. DeBraw probably remembers the hoo-ha around that. So we came in, and the group took a look at what was compatible in the area, and we came in with more of a cottage type product that's single story, single family, and we feel that that's compatible with the area. And it was zoned with 8 units to the acre, or 160 units, so we came in well below that, and we think that's going to fit well with the community. And I thank you for your consideration, and if there's any questions that you have for me.
I do have a question, and it's nothing that would derail your project in any way, but I'm curious about this agreement with the Farms District. And, you know, the Farms District's land is obviously public land. I'm a little bit concerned about their ability to agree to utilize the trees on their public land in perpetuity to serve as a part of the buffer for your private development.
Actually,
I'm thinking way down the head, if 10 years from now, 15 years from now, the farms needs that land because they need to expand the canals or something, what happens then?
our property line is actually on the edge of their bank. So the trees actually sit maybe 3/4 of the root system of the tree and everything would be on our property, and maybe just a little wedge of it is actually on theirs. But as you would look at the plat and the line for the Farms District, it is on the edge of the actual embankment.
Okay. Well, I just would ask staff, I know you haven't seen the agreement yet, but when it comes in, if there is that possibility that at some point the district can withdraw those trees from serving as part of the buffer, then we ought to make allowances to make sure that the buffer is restored in some way.
Well, one of the things we're also doing after going through the property, we have a great amount of oak trees on the property, and we plan to take those and tree spade them and actually move them into our buffer area so that there is an enhancement to that whole area to meet the county code, but yet take it a step further. So we have a lot of really, really nice, smaller 3, 4, 5-inch caliber oak trees that will just be easy to move, and we're going to put those into the buffer area on our property as well.
Okay. Now, does any member of the commission or county staff or the applicant have any other questions or comments you'd like to make on the matter?
Yeah, and if you do enter into that agreement, I know you said who will maintain that?
The community, and that'll be part of the association documents and as well as part of the plat.
Okay, so you'll maintain that buffer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any concerns expressed by neighboring owners regarding the development?
No.
Mr. Bowling, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to point out that the recommended condition 1A uses the word permanently in place, the trees be permanently in place, and the maintenance obligation of the property owners association. So I think those 2 points are covered in the recommended motion.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, just one question. Would that also cover replacement? I mean, if you would lose a 30-foot or 30-inch oak tree, how would that be replaced with, according to our code, 6 inches?
Our code for required buffers, whether it's preserved in place trees or planted trees, say 10 or 15 years from now, there are some replacement requirements that would apply to any project that's subject to our landscaping requirements, which this is.
Very good.
So we treat it the same as if a planted tree 15 years from now died and needed to be replaced.
Thank you.
So to address Alan's concern, it's the property owners association's obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some
So just for my education, if these trees were on the applicant's property and we didn't have this separate question, and the canopy trees were required, and then suddenly lightning struck one of the canopy trees and it died, they would under our code be required to replace that tree anyway.
That's correct. And I do want to say that there are cases where if there are mature canopy trees that they may exceed the county requirements. So you might not get like canopy for a long time. But yes, we have replacement standards.
Okay. Anything else from the commission, county, or the applicant? Any member of the public wish to be heard on this? If not, we'll go ahead and close the quasi-judicial hearing. Members of the commission, what's your desire?
Motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion to that. Mr. Brognano. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rednauer, second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Hearing none, that motion unanimously carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 5B, which is the Sisler non-commercial kennel. It's a request for administrative permit use approval for a non-commercial kennel to keep up to 9 hens, 3 roosters, and 2 turkeys. William Sisler Sr. and Brenda Sisler are the owners. William Sisler Jr. is the agent. It's located at 6556 51st Avenue. The zoning is RS3, residential, single family, up to 3 units per acre. The land use designation is L1, low density 1, residential up to 3 units per acre. And it is, again, a quasi-judicial matter. So once again, we'll start by asking whether any members, or asking any members of the Commission to please disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, investigations, or any other factors which would prevent them from considering this matter on a fair basis based upon the law and the evidence. Anything to disclose?
No.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and open the quasi-judicial meeting. Again, anybody who plans to testify on this matter, I'd ask that you please stand and be sworn by the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Mr. Bowling?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'll have Mr. Sweeney do the presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight is an application for administrative permit use approval for a non-commercial kennel, the Sisler non-commercial kennel. The subject site is located within the Winter Beach Highlands subdivision on 51st Avenue. Here's a location map depicting the existing site, as well as an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site. It's a single-family home property, approximately half acre, and if you look closely at the aerial, this is probably the best imagery I can present to you. So look closely, you can see there is an existing chicken coop / pen on the property towards the central area of the property. The site plan that was submitted by the applicant depicts, again, a little bit poorer quality imagery, but you can still see, and he's boxed in sort of the area with some setbacks to the property lines. It's approximately 39 feet from the rear property line, 42 feet from the north property line, 72 feet from the south property line, and about 91 feet from the front. The lot itself is actually 2 platted lots that were originally 70-foot wide lots. It's now been combined to be a 140-foot wide lot by 152 feet deep. Total lot area is 21,820 square feet, or again, approximately 1/2 acre. The non-commercial kennel application that's been submitted is a request to keep a total of 9 hens, 3 roosters, and 2 turkeys on the property, which is allowed under our non-commercial kennel regulations. However, roosters are considered to be noisy animals, and there are additional requirements per the code that apply to noisy animals, including minimum lot area and minimum setbacks for the pens for the keeping of noisy animals on the property. I'm going to toggle to the next slide. This is the actual LDR requirement for the keeping of noisy animals. The minimum lot area is 40,000 square feet, a little under a full acre, as well as the minimum setback requirements is 75 feet from all property lines. And if I toggle back, you'll see that with the lot only being 140 feet wide, there's no way to achieve that 75-foot setback. At the most, it could be 70 if it was centered on the property. And again, it's roughly half the size of the minimum lot area requirement. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the hens as well as the turkeys, which are quiet animals, but not recommending approval of the roosters, which are considered to be noisy animals. There's also a requirement that in order to be a non-commercial kennel, that no byproducts or animals themselves may be sold from the property. So we're also recommending a condition that there should be no sale of chickens, turkeys, or their eggs. Thank you for your time.
Any members of the Commission have any questions of county staff?
Yeah.
Just, I'll ask a question. Roosters strike me as pretty noisy birds. But, I mean, is there any objective standard that you apply? I mean, have you consistently applied roosters? Has it come up in the past? I mean,
Yeah, we have, the county has both Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of County Commissioners, and Code Enforcement Board when that's come up. There's also some species of birds, talking birds, that can be very loud as well. So we've had both of those types of birds actually had issues in the past with that. Dogs are considered loud animals as well. So we've We didn't define, any more than what you have in your backup and what Ryan showed you, but that's how it's been applied in practice.
This came out of a code enforcement board action.
Correct.
Should I assume from that the neighbors did complain about the noise?
The original citation was from a complaint. This particular code case is actually from a follow-up by a code officer that noticed that I guess the birds had been removed or were no longer present when the code officer followed up. The case was brought into compliance, and then a follow-up a year later, the officer happened to be in the same area, realized the birds were back, if you will. So a new case has been opened. And also, I just wanted to dovetail on the roosters were actually part of the root of the creation for these specific criteria, I believe, in the Roseland area. So that it has, it's actually part of the reason why these regulations are in place.
Mr. Sisler?
I have a question. Accessory use.
Thank you for asking about the objective criteria. There is an objective criteria based on complaints, which we have had none. I've checked every time I've come to the office, every time I've spoken with county staff. There have been no complaints. We have had our roosters, 3 of them for the past 3 years that we've lived on that property, and we still have had no complaints. With the large aerial view, a couple of slides back, I printed one out, you can see that directly to the north, that is an old family friend of many years, and to the east and the south, there's no one there. There's plenty of open property for what noise the birds do generate to dissipate. Now, what they do generate, I've actually tested with a sound meter, and they produce under the lower limits of nighttime decibels. The nighttime decibels, I believe, were 65 decibels, and from my mailbox, they were tested at 54. And by comparison, the dog who was in the backyard of our neighbors was at 64. This was during the daytime. I requested in the responses I had from the questions of me, I requested that our birds be tested to see, so we could have some objective numbers so that I could come to you with a response. And I have not been made aware of any numbers from the county. So, in terms of decibels, they're well under the lower limits of nighttime, which is the lowest. There have been no complaints, and
Can I ask a
I've
question?
been there for a while.
Sure. Okay, any member of the commission, please go ahead.
So the non-commercial kennel will be an accessory use to the principal residential use. Explain accessory use to me.
Right, and the principal use is single-family home, a single-family zoning district.
I got that.
Accessory use is something that can be associated with
Yeah.
the principal use, but doesn't conflict with it if it's regulated, and if it's smaller in scale, it doesn't become the principal use.
Still non-commercial, then.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And is your contention that these roosters are less noisy than the average rooster that is considered a noisy animal in our...
I have no evidence to think that these are different from other roosters. I will say, and I believe the decibel reading that Mr. Sisler has brought forward. In fact, as Ryan had mentioned a number of years ago, probably 12 or 15 years ago now, when we had a rooster code enforcement issue such that we had 300 roosters on a property that got moved to a 5-acre property, and every time that we took decibel readings with 300 roosters, we did not exceed the decibel level. It wasn't the decibel level, the energy, the intensity of the noise itself. It was the different times during the day and night, and the type of noise itself. So it really is kind of I think a qualitative reason why it's in the code for roosters specifically.
So to follow up, noisy doesn't equal decibel reading.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So would a barking dog complaint have generated this same discussion?
And we've gotten those, certainly. And they're considered, noisy animals as well. So they have...
So if there are complaints about a barking dog, then they would have to come and request this non-commercial kennel?
If they meet the number.
If you exceed the number of pets that you can have before you hit the threshold of being a non-commercial kennel, you can have up to 5 household pets. So most people have a dog. It is, if they don't have a number of dogs that makes them become that category, then we don't get into that. So again, it's not going to be necessarily the decibel level, the energy. It's going to be the type of noise that it is that's considered a disturbance to a person of reasonable sensitivity.
So if I've got 2 roosters and I get a complaint, is that any different than 2 dogs?
Yes.
Thank you.
How many roosters? You said you have to have 5 dogs before you consider it a kennel.
Right.
How many roosters do you have to have before you consider it a
Well,
kennel?
roosters are not considered a pet, a household pet.
That's the difference. So.
Non-roosters, hens,
Yes, hens. Yeah.
are. They can be, yes.
So hens and roosters.
Right.
It's just a difference in the noise and the type of noise that's generated.
May I ask a question where the distinction between household pet and not household pet comes from?
Yes, our definition section, Chapter 901, and we list out what's considered a household pet.
Impressive.
Does it not refer to domestic animals, and poultry is one of them?
It does.
He said it was the hen, but not the rooster.
So there's clear.
A rooster is also poultry, though, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make that clear because they are our pets. All of them. I would like to speak on the amount of noise because I understand the objective nature of decibels. Yes, they are a very different noise. It does matter when they crow and how often. Ours crow at almost precisely 6:30 in the morning because that's how we raise them. You can set them almost like alarm clocks if you hand raise them properly. They crow also around 2 o'clock when I get home, and they crow to let us know when they're ready to go to bed. And that's basically when they crow. And to bed is at nightfall after they herd the hens into the coop and we lock them out.
Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Anything else from either county staff or Mr. Sisler?
I'd like to thank you for your all patience. It's been just learning the system as I'm going, so thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to be heard on this? If not, we'll go ahead and close the quasi-judicial hearing. Members of the commission?
Well, a couple points. One is there's a minimum size of 40,000 square feet that applies, and based on, I think, the evidence presented by staff and just the presentation that the roosters apply as noisy animals, that we've got a decision to make, and I would formally recommend staff's recommendation with the 2 conditions as presented.
Okay, Mr. Emmons has made a motion to approve county staff's recommendation.
Welcome further discussion.
Any second to that motion?
I second it.
That was Mr. Brognano seconding the motion. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion unanimously carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item number 6,
We got some planning.
which is a public hearing. It's also a quasi-judicial matter. It's MPM 7LP, request to rezone plus or minus 15.18 acres from CL Limited Commercial and RMH6 Mobile Home Residential District to CH, which is heavy commercial. As I said, it's quasi-judicial, and I'll ask again any member of the commission to disclose any site visits, ex parte communications, investigations, any other matters which may prevent them from deciding this matter on the facts and on the evidence. I will disclose that I did take a site visit. I went out and drove around the site, drove around the area. I also looked up the county zoning map on the internet and took a little bit broader picture of the zoning in that surrounding area, a little bit broader than is in the map in our materials. Okay, let's go ahead then. We'll open the public hearing, quasi-judicial matter on this. I'd ask anybody who plans to be heard on this matter to please stand and be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we will start with the county. You're going to turn this over to Mr. Sweeney again?
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Shute. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Shute. Okay, very good.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioners. And for the record, my name is Bill Shute. I'm the Senior Economic Development Planner for Indian River County. And with respect to this site, it is request to rezone approximately 15.18 acres from CL Limited Commercial and RM6 Residential Mobile Home up to 6 units per acre to CH Heavy Commercial. And on the screen before you, you have an overall aerial shot showing the general location. It's directly north of 77th Street. It is on the west side of US Highway 1, east of Old Dixie Highway and the FEC Railroad, and just south of Palm Paradise Mobile Home Park. The purpose of the request is to secure the zoning necessary to use the site with uses that are allowed under the CH zoning district. And in these parcels happen to be in the area called the Wabasca Corridor, so there also are commercial zoning district regulations that apply to this site, specific to the Wabasca Corridor. With respect to the CH zoning, the zoning district allows uses such as storage, warehousing, contractor trades, and light manufacturing. Generally, uses that are lower traffic generating uses in the CH district versus the CL district. With respect to the Wabasca Corridor regulations, the focus is on keeping uses and activities generally indoors, inside buildings. There's a focus on aesthetic regulations for buildings, landscaping, and signage. And along those lines of keeping uses indoors, there's a specific list in those regulations of uses that are not permitted or prohibited uses. And that's the outdoor display of automobiles, motorized vehicles for sale or rental, outdoor display of mobile homes for sale or rental, drive-in theaters, recycling centers are not allowed, transmission towers, flea markets, transient merchant uses, as well as outdoor temporary sales events that require temporary use permits. With respect to the future land use, up on the screen is a copy of the future land use map for this portion, the property and surrounding uses. And as you can see, between US Highway 1 and Old Dixie Highway and FEC Railroad going north and south, it's all commercial industrial planned for future land uses. So it has a CI land use designation. With respect to the existing and adjacent zoning, to the north is RMH6, the residential mobile home, 6 units per acre. It's a non-conforming zoning district for this CI land use designated area. To the south, you have CH zoning, similar to what's requested by applicant. To the west, you have, again, as indicated before, Old Dixie Highway, the FEC Railroad, as well as a mix of zoning with IL, RM6, and PD. And to the east, you have US Highway 1 and CL. And also, just to note, the CL, just directly to the east, it's owned by the Indian River Land Trust, and they have a general purpose of preserving land for conservation, sometimes passive recreation, as is the case just north of Hobart. Or excuse me, now I'm thinking about the Hobart Road there, but just north of residential development off of 79th Street, there's some land owned by Land Trust as well. Proposed zoning map. So as you can see, the main change is changing the area red to CH to be consistent, carrying the CH from the south northward. And along the lines of the chairman, we also threw in some overall shots showing some blown-out version showing the zoning up and down U.S. Highway 1, in between Old Dixie Highway. And you can see the general area of Bosso Bridge and so forth. But I guess the point here is you can see in brown the RMH mobile home district, and just south of it the CL and the CH. And all along U.S. Highway 1 between Old Dixie Highway, it's with the exception of the RMH6 area here, it's planned for, or zoned for CL, which is limited commercial, CG, IL. You can see that it carries on southward. Again, along with that statement, lots of CL, IL, and again all the way down to the Gifford area. So it's kind of a unique spot where you have a little bit of residential zoning in between Old Dixie Highway and US 1. As with all rezoning requests, there's set criteria that are analyzed, as shown on the screen. And looking at the concurrency, we check for sufficient capacity for certain facilities, transportation of water, wastewater, solid water, stormwater management. With respect to the site, no concurrency is required because you're changing from CL and RM6 to CH, which is CH is less intense for traffic. A detailed concurrency review will be done at the time of project development, as with any development project. We check for rezonings. We always check the future land use policies, and the particular ones to note are 1.17 and 1.18. As noted earlier, the site's land use designation is CI, commercial industrial, and also as noted, the site's RMH6 zone portion currently is inconsistent with the land use designation of CI. The request to go to CH is consistent with a comprehensive plan. Environmental impacts is the same for current and proposed zoning. Native trees are subject to county tree protection requirements, and with the rezoning request, there's no adverse impacts. Looking at the compatibilities with the southeast, you have, again, CH zoning, so it's a proposed continuation of the CH zoning, no incompatibilities. North, as we mentioned, is the mobile home park, RMH6, is non-conforming zoning with respect to the CI land use designation. With that site being in proximity of this request, there's site design and buffering would be implemented during development of a site to minimize impacts. So there's no incompatibilities for long-term. Short-term, they're mitigated through site design criteria. To the east, you have the CL, as mentioned earlier, separated by US Highway 1 and no incompatibilities. And west, you have IL, light industrial, RM6, which residential multifamily, 6 units an acre, and PD. And then, again, that's separated by Old Dixie Highway plus the FEC Railroad. No incompatibilities are there. Now, again, specifically focusing on the mobile home park issue, the non-conforming mobile home park to the north is not consistent with the land use plan and will eventually be developed with commercial. The mobile home park may continue as a non-conforming use until vacated for more than a year or vacated and rezoned to commercial. Extra buffer requirement applies to rezoning site if mobile home park is still in place at time the rezoning site is developed. And regarding the buffering, and I just made a mental note with the first presentation with Ryan, but he had noted some type B buffer along the roadway of that first development project, but also with this one, between the uses of the residential and the mobile home park residential and the commercial, you'd have a type B buffer, which would be between 30 and 25 feet wide. You have trees, canopy trees, understory trees, shrubs. In addition, a 6-foot tall opaque feature required, such as landscape wall or berm. And just to show a graphic from the LDRs up there, what that might look like visually looking down on a drawing. In conclusion, the requested CH is compatible with surrounding uses. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The area is deemed suitable for commercial uses. It meets the criteria to be rezoned and no additional environmental impacts, and staff supports the request. With that, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the rezoning request from RMH6 and CL to CH.
Does any member of the commission have any questions of county staff? I do have a few questions. On page 5 of the agenda package is a section entitled Zoning District Differences, and it explains what are called the purpose statements of the different zoning districts. And heavy commercial, there are some examples given: wholesale trade, major repair services, manufacturing activities. But it says that the CH district, the heavy commercial district, is intended to provide support services necessary for the development of commercial and industrial uses allowed within other non-residential zoning districts. And then you get down to the limited commercial, the next one down, and it says this district is intended to accommodate the convenience, retail, and service needs of area residents, while minimizing the impact of such activities on nearby residential areas. The way I'm reading that, and jump in, the way I'm reading that is the heavy commercial district is designed to support other commercial industrial uses in the surrounding area, whereas the limited commercial is intended to support residential uses in the surrounding area. And I'm struggling right there because I'm basically saying, that's why I looked at the larger picture of the zoning map, because while it's true that the immediate adjoining property to the south is heavy commercial, there aren't many other heavy commercial properties in this area. You have to go up to 510 on the north, and I don't know if it's as far as 65th Street on the south, but it's down there. Predominantly, what's in this area is residential. Everything across the street is all residential. There's residential to some extent on the other side of the railroad tracks. All that zoning down the US 1 corridor is limited commercial. And that would tell me that this is intended to be a residential area with limited commercial supporting the residential uses, the convenience, retail, and service needs of the residents. I see this heavy commercial as something inconsistent with the notion that it's predominantly a residential area, and the US 1 corridor is predominantly limited commercial to support the residential area. Now, help me out on this.
Well, I can disagree.
Fine. That's what I'm
But I also agree. The purpose statements, I think, are generally on point, and you're exactly right. For example, what you'll see that's allowed in CL and not in CH are the kinds of convenience uses that would help residences, convenience stores,
retail,
fuel sales, retail, and that's really driven by rooftops, and you're exactly right. And heavy commercial does have business services and contractor trades types of uses, things that do support other businesses. But you also have warehousing and mini storage and personal storage, which also supports residents. So there is some overlap there. But I think you could say the same thing, and I think you're right in terms of the kind of the band of commercial industrial, which includes CH, CL, CG, all that 7-mile stretch between Vero Beach and Sebastian that has every one of those types of districts, including some industrial as well. In a lot of places, it is a narrow band. And you do have residential not that far away, within a half a mile on either side. But you do have that concentration along the railroad tracks and along Old Dixie and ultimately US 1. So I think what happens in a lot of those cases is that the commercial industrial is stretched out. It's not a preferred pattern. It's a strip pattern. So that's where a lot of different kinds of commercial are, including the heavy commercial, including some of the industrial. In this particular case, I would say that we looked at the heavy commercial that's nearby. We looked at the industrial that's on the other side of Old Dixie and the railroad tracks immediately to the west. And in this location, we thought CH makes sense for it to be there. I would not say that it makes sense everywhere up and down that 7-mile area where you have a lot of CL, stretches of CL. But again, I think you do have a mix of uses. We tend to see CL, but especially CG, a lot of times properties get rezoned from heavy commercial to CG near major intersections. You saw that down at Oslo Road and Old Dixie Highway not too long ago. So we lose CH in some areas. This is one of the opportunities we thought it made sense for it to be between heavy commercial and then industrial to the west. But I would agree. I would not say that CH is appropriate everywhere up and down those stretches where you have CL.
It strikes me as sending a mixed signal when you have CH right next to CL and predominantly CL to the north and south, at least for, I don't know, 6, 8 blocks, 10 blocks. Because it's saying, on the one hand, okay, this piece of property is going to support commercial uses and industrial uses. This piece of property is going to support residential uses. It kind of, to me, goes against the notion of zoning in the first place, where we're trying to keep residential areas residential or keep, commercial and industrial areas commercial and industrial.
But this is not a residential area. Residential is nearby, and we have a commercial industrial. Again, it is a strip pattern. It's north and south, miles, and it's very narrow east-west, all up and down that stretch. And I think we have cases, and that's why Bill showed the map of. We have areas that have CL and CH right beside each other, and in a number of areas further to the south. And again, we've already got CH in one area here. We have industrial right to the west, and that's why to us it makes sense here. It wouldn't make sense, for instance, if you went further north, away from where you already had some heavy commercial or some light industrial.
Key factor in your consideration is the fact that you've got industrial to the west there.
Right, it's one of the considerations.
Yeah, because it's already zoned as CH.
Right to the south and southeast. Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Anybody else have any questions or comments of county staff? Is the applicant here? And do you have any questions of county staff? Or simultaneously, would you like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Wesley Mills with Mills Short & Associates, and I do not have any questions of staff, and I don't feel it's my place to be up here and be redundant after Mr. Bowling. However, one thing I did want to make note of with the heavy commercial properties to the south, my client currently has under contract 19 acres, of which four of those parcels to the south are also part of one property and will be part of one development. So we just want to make the heavy commercial area more compatible as one parcel.
Any questions of the applicant?
One other thing is I wanted to just mention while I'm up here is that any future development project will be compliant with the landscape buffering requirements like any other heavy commercial project next to or surrounding residential developments, and we'll have buffers like all other projects that you guys see.
Okay.
One quick question. Does he own the property subject to the rezoning tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And he owns a piece to the south as well that's already zoned CH?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He owns it, or it's under contract?
It's under contract.
Okay. Got it.
But this parcel he owns in fee simple?
All 7 parcels are collectively under one contract as a purchase.
Okay. So
which includes the limited commercial, the heavy commercial, 19 acres in total.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, either by the commission or county staff or the applicant? Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Yes, please come right up to the podium and...
Mobile home's going to be here.
Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
My name is John Woods. I live on Martha's Lane. It's in Hobart Landing, which is immediately across the street from this area. And it's just a question of the environmental impact. Right now, the drainage for that site is accomplished through a county open drain that empties into our private channels. And there's silting as part of that process. So does the environmental impact look at how the drainage of this new whatever development? I guess there isn't any description of what we're going to do or why we need this. But is it going to deal with the new drainage? Are we going to continue to have to service drainage of this new property with whatever comes out of it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I could,
Mr. Bowen.
You're correct. There's no development plan or engineering plan to look at this stage. But we do have, for any development project, we do have drainage reviews in terms of where outfalls can be, if they're legal positive outfalls or not. And what I would invite you or any other member of the Hobart Landing community, if we could get your name and email address, if and when a development plan comes in, we could contact you, you could come in and take a look at, because the details will be in place, or at least the proposals in place at that time, and you might be able to bring some information about drainage that everyone needs to hear.
And I'm just speaking as private at this point. It's just a concern. We've got a problem with siltage on that outlet right now, and we'd like to do something to address. I wouldn't like to see it balloon.
It would be information that would be good at that time.
Okay.
And Mr. Woods, that's a county-owned ditch?
Yeah, it's a county drain, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure the history, but I don't think it would be approved today to dump county water into a private channel.
It goes under US 1 over to Hobart Landing.
Yeah.
Your canals back there?
Yeah. It was improved a few years back, and with that improvement, more water, but with more water came a lot more of everything else. And right now, it's nobody owns it except us. Right.
Thank you very much.
So was that a question? I would hope that we could at least have that included as part of the environmental assessment of this thing.
What we can do is put a notice in our own computer system on this subject property to contact you if we get your contact information.
And I'll leave that with
this gentleman can get that information from you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Again, please state your name and address.
My name's Bill Brem. I live in St. Pete Beach, but I'm from Palm Paradise Mobile Home Park, 7945 US Highway 1. Is that a projector here so I can project things up there?
I think they can help you. Staff can help you with that.
Go ahead.
Non-conforming.
This?
Oh, not you. So, I'm sorry, I was talking to Bill. You should be able to see it. Pretty good.
Yeah, once again, my name, I'm sorry, somebody's talking?
Yep.
There's a microphone right in front of you.
Okay. I'm hard of hearing, so I'm making sure I'm here. Can everyone hear me? Fine.
Yes, we can.
My name is Bill Brem. I bought Palm Paradise Mobile Home Park in May, and I would like to make...
Just for clarification, is that the park immediately north of this piece?
I was just about to describe it. Yes, I'm in a park adjacent to this land, just to the north.
Okay.
And my request is basically going to be to not accept the changing in zoning of the parcel directly south of me, which is the other Mobile Home Park 6 lot. And if rezoning must proceed, I agree with you that it should be commercial light or commercial limited and not commercial heavy. First, tell you about the park. It's not going anywhere. I read in some of the county things, they seem to imply that it's not going to be there. I have approximately 80 full-time residents. It's a 55 and older park. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes.
It's a 55 and older park, and they're not going anywhere. We just two units have recently been sold, so new people come in all the time, and these old people they like to be there. It's a happy park. And we've made since I purchased it, we've made some improvements in the park. I've new electricity, the water plant's been improved. I've put in over $100,000 already just to improve the park. It's not going anywhere. First, I want to state my reasons to not rezone. There's a RMH6 buffer below the park. I have a map I can show. It's the same one you guys were seeing. You were showing a minute ago. And I submit that there's no site plan been submitted, so there's no reason for this rezoning because we don't know what could be put there. And rezoning it to commercial heavy will be damaging to the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the park. And the noise and light pollution is not going to be buffered by 30 feet and a 6-foot wall. So that's my basic argument for not rezoning. If they must rezone, I'm saying we should be commercial light, commercial limited, whatever you want to call it. And once again, there's been no site plan. We don't know what's going to be there. There's lots of detrimental uses for commercial heavy, and it's without a site plan. We have no idea what they could put there. It's lots of detrimental stuff. So once again, here's a picture of. This is me. This is 80 residents, and they're right up against the buffer line. There's mobile homes just 2 feet off the line, 5 feet off the line. They've been there since 1972 at least. We have residents who have been there since the beginning. Anyway, there's right below it is that RMH6 is right below it. This is what they're proposing right here to change that to commercial heavy. And I'm saying not to do that, at least if nothing else, commercial light, commercial limited, sorry. So the reason to go for commercial limited and not commercial heavy is it still is compatible with the Wabasso corridor plan that I read that they've proposed. It's consistent with the other property zoning. It's a lot of commercial light above us, below us, to the east and west. And there's several noisy and offensive commercial heavy permitted things, which will be definitely not compatible with living near senior citizens living there within 30 feet. By 55 plus means their age, not quantity. As I read it, there's a 30-foot buffer with a 6-foot wall, and that's the only thing that could be between park residents and welding plants, a recycling center, or dry cleaner. I saw that he just said before that it can't be a recycling center, but in the Wabasso plan it says it can be. Once again, this proposal has no planned usage, no site plan has been approved. The only reason they're applying for this is to increase the land value for resale or whatever they're planning to do with it. There's no legitimate use for the change to CH. It's only to increase the value, and that's not what the purpose of rezoning is. Once again, there's many harmful uses in commercial heavy that we just don't know what they're going to be. Here's a list. This is my final slide. Things I got out of the Wabasso quarter plan that are permitted. Y'all see that? Is that too small? Mm-hmm. We got welding plants, dry cleaning plants, crematoriums, durable, non-durable goods. I don't know what that means. Bars, drive-through restaurants, building materials, general contractors, body and paint shops, fuel dealers, whole lots of things. Anyway, that's my presentation. I believe it should be not rezoned at all because there's no site plan, no reason for it to be rezoned at this time. And if you must rezone it, then it should be commercial limited. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
And your reference is to the very top that is currently...
Yes, some of the property to the north of what they're trying to rezone.
Okay, thank you.
This right here,
yep.
RMH6, it's about 3 acres.
Okay.
It's RMH6 right now. That's not part of the park.
Yep.
They have that under contract, I assume. And this is the park right there. And it's right there. There's no natural buffer there built in except for whatever they would have to put there, which was, according to the plan, is 30 feet at most with a 6-foot wall. Is that your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the Commission? County staff? Applicant, do you have any questions of this gentleman?
Cross-examination.
No questions. One thing I just wanted to clarify is that a site plan has not been submitted just because that's not the typical process for development. So the first step was request and rezoning. However, we do have some conceptual planning, and I assure you that the intent of my client is to develop this site.
As a what?
I don't believe we're allowed to. Are we allowed to discuss that in a rezoning application?
Mr. Chairman, again, just the caution is that it's not something that they can be held to. That's why generally we don't encourage people to.
So we have no idea what they could put there. They could be putting crematoriums and auto body paint shops, right?
If it is rezoned to heavy commercial, I think every use that you had on that slide except the recycling center could be allowed. A couple of the uses were special exception or administrative permit, which has a higher test.
The only administrative one was the recycling center, and that's administrative approval only.
Right, but I think you had unenclosed commercial amusements, which is special exception. But you're correct. Going to the heavy commercial district, you have to assume the possibility. I mean, some uses are not very probable, but you have to look at the possibility of the uses that are like you had in there, which was correct. Contractors, trades. You could have a dry cleaning plant. You could have fuel dealers, body shop, storage. Oh, you're correct. And just the only other thing, Mr. Chairman, that again, it was in the presentation, but it was a factor in staff's recommendation was that this is in the Wabasso corridor, so the uses we're talking about would be inside buildings that are, so you don't have uses that are outside of buildings that you otherwise could have in CH that did not have that extra set of controls of the Wabasso corridor.
Right, but have you ever lived next to a dry cleaner?
I don't know if I have or not.
Okay.
I don't. I've lived next to a laundromat.
You know it if you did. I'm just. I'll go back to the same question of why is it commercial heavy? We don't know why are they even allowed to ask for rezoning when there's no site plan. We don't know what they're asking for. They can put any of this stuff.
Understand, they're not required to say what they're going to do, and even if they did tell us what their plan is, tomorrow they could change their mind. So
Understood.
It's pretty much useless information.
Which is exactly my reason why it should be commercial.
So from our standpoint, frankly, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of what are the most intrusive uses that would be allowed. Do I think that's appropriate?
Yeah.
Because those are the uses that would be permitted.
And he is correct. I did not put all the things on there. Commercial fishing.
No, I know. I mean, it went on for
didn't think
10 pages that we had here.
What's that?
Yeah. I say the list of list of possible uses went on for about 10 pages in our materials.
I have a question for staff. So let's look at the let's say that was not a non-conforming zone, and it was residential. Would we look at that any differently?
Yes. Staff would.
Yeah.
Staff would look at if you were abutting a designated, residentially designated area.
Yep.
We would not recommend heavy commercial right beside it. Just actually in this very area, a little bit to the north and to the east, on the east side of US 1, Pro Transmasters up there. They came in as a planned development rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
Their eastern boundary abuts residentially designated property, conforming residentially designated property. And they actually went through the PD rezoning process where you have a site plan and you have controls, and they're Wabasso corridor compliant buildings there. So that because staff would not recommend heavy commercial on that site because it ran up against actually abutted residentially designated property to the east. But we did support, and the board did approve, and it was developed as a repair shop basically with setbacks and buffers and building corridor aesthetics.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
I have one question of Stan. Dan, as far as auto body repair and the Wabasso corridor requiring the indoors, would they be allowed to park cars that are going to be repaired or damaged cars outside, or would they have to be inside?
People could drive. Parking lots are allowed in the CL, and in the corridor as well. So I think any staging areas or parking areas where it's customer parking for servicing the cars, what we would have is if they had an area where if they had damaged vehicles, we'd probably have them designate on the site plan area around back or a screened off area for that. But you would have, any customer dropping off their car or parking to go in would just be in the parking area.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Any other person wish to be heard on the matter? Yes, sir. Again, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bob Burr.
Well, wait till you get to the microphone down there.
My name is Glenn Burr. I live in Hobart Landing, and I'm here representing our community. I'm actually the president of the association in there, and we have a number of people from that community here tonight, and we're all concerned about what the zoning change may result in. I agree with you from what you've spoken before about, and our previous speaker, that I don't see any particular reason to change that zoning from what it is now to the CH. I also don't understand that if it does get changed to CH, how the Wabasso corridor plan would rule out something that would now be considered CH buildable, something that could be built in there because it's rezoned to CH. What exactly does the Wabasso corridor plan rule out?
Mr. Bowling?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Shute put up a slide in his presentation, and that's actually listing uses right out of the code. Wabasso Corridor actually has some use restrictions, not only landscaping and sign and building requirements. So it's actually an overlay zone, so there are extra requirements on the subject property, whether it's CL or CG or CH. And so there are special prohibitions in the Wabasso Corridor area in it above and beyond heavy commercial, and that those restrictions are in the zoning code, in the same code.
So there would be some sort of restrictions?
Yes.
Even if it was zone ZH,
that's correct.
That would be disallowed by the Wabasso plan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. In any case, let's generally the community is, hopeful that you guys don't change it to the CH.
Any questions for this individual? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to be heard on this? Any other questions or comments by members of the commission to any of the people who have spoken to us? If not, okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Discussion.
Happy to discuss this one. The reality that we're not to consider the mobile homeowners is troubling to me, because the fact of the matter is they are there, and that it is, while it's non-conforming, it is currently being used as residential, and it doesn't appear that is going to change anytime soon. So I think that is, I set that question up to see what the what consideration was given, and if it would have been different consideration if that was slotted as a conforming use. So I'm troubled by that. I'm also, with respect to the Allen's contention on the commercial light, I would say that it has merit, but the reality is that the southern part of that, the existing zone is CH. So it already is CH, and it's been that way. So there's a place for it potentially, and you could make, as staff has I think done effectively, that you could, and a reasonable person could argue the compatibility issue. So I'm a bit challenged by it personally.
Just addressing that second point, Bill, if you could put back up the zoning map, the first one you showed, the first zoning map that you showed in your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I think you even had one broader than that.
Yeah.
It might be the next one, maybe. Oh, that one right there.
That's it.
Okay, now, you see all along US 1, south and north, there is that one site that is CH right next to this one.
Yep.
And my very first impression when I looked at this agenda item and started reading it, I thought, well, there's CH right next door. What's the big deal to extend it CH to the next one? But then to me, it wasn't just a matter of what was next door. To me, it was the nature, if you will, of the surrounding area. Now, pretty much everything north and south until you get up to US 1 up there, to 510 up there. All that property on the east side of US 1 where this site is, that's all first commercial limited, which is supposed to support residential. And then you get into all of that R3, RS3, RS6, RS6. It's all residential over there. And I started to conclude that, at least to me, it wasn't so much what was the property next door, but to me it was what's the flavor, what's the predominant use of this surrounding area. And to me, the predominant use, while there were some exceptions, because you go on the other side of the railroad tracks and you pick up an IG, pick up an IL, but you see there's still RM6 right next to that. But the predominant use in that area was residential or CL supporting residential. And that's when I started to say, well, gee, just because there's a commercial heavy next door, it didn't change, in my view, that the predominant use in that area was residential or commercial supporting residential. So that at least was my thought process. Whether right or wrong, that was my thought process.
Yeah, when I look at that, I also see the industrial light to the west, and you could also interpret that to mean that the CH is appropriate when you look to the north, and so that's how I viewed it as well. So
fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough.
No, the one thing we're not considering, though, is we have an existing business there, and exactly how is this going to affect that business?
Yeah.
This gentleman's already got an investment there, so that's something to think about.
residential.
And we are effectively giving somebody permission to do something they would otherwise not be able to do, which will affect this business in some way, shape, or form. So we need to think about that also.
I agree.
Is there any further discussion among the commission? Do we have then a motion either to recommend approval of the rezoning or to not recommend approval of the rezoning? Okay, we have a meeting by Ms. Calderon to not approve the recommended zoning. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Rednauer has seconded it. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have, the vote is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess all 7 of us tonight. So the vote is 6-1 in favor of the motion, against the rezoning, with Mr. Stewart being the dissenting vote. Thank you very much on that. Thank you, gentlemen. And this is only, as you understand, a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. They actually make the decision. Is that correct?
Actually, for rezoning, this denial has to be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners, which I assume the applicant will do. So I do assume this will go to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah. Be interesting.
Because the recommendation was that, based on analysis, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the request.
That's where yeah, positively. You can if you recommend approval of something, it's a recommendation. If you deny, it's final action unless appealed.
So
it's an odd part of our code.
So Stan, from a process standpoint, they
have
the right to appeal,
yes.
And then it goes to the
Board of County Commissioners
for
on
a
appeal.
decision.
That's correct.
Okay. So there's still an option.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, Commissioners' matters. Any commissioner have any matter they'd like to bring up?
That's a tough one.
Next is the planning matters. We have had a package of planning documents. Anything further on that, Mr. Bowling?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just two things real quickly. One is the connection policy comp plan change that you all recommended that the board not approve. That will be going next Tuesday, and so I'll be sure tomorrow morning to send you all a copy of staff's report so you can kind of keep track of that, and I'll report whatever action the board might take. And then we will not need a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting January 28th in 2 weeks, but we do believe we will need one, the first meeting in February, which will be February 11th. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions or comments of commissioners on the planning information package?
Thank you.
Attorney's matters. Mr. DeBrawl.
I have done, sir.
Okay. Anything else to come before us? If not, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for attending.